Good evening, everyone. I am Thas Nirmalathas representing Mechanical Engineering Sectional Committee. So I would like to warmly welcome you all on behalf of our committee. So first I would like to thank our guest lecturer, Professor Thas Nirmalathas, for being with us by committing his valuable time and deliver a valuable lecture to Sri Lankan engineers. And especially I would like to welcome Professor Lilika Dias and Dr. Ajit Pascual from the Department of Electronic and Telecommunication Engineering, University of Melbourne. We had a wonderful lecture. About 2 weeks back, we had a wonderful lecture by Engineer Indrika Valapita on Internet of Things. Will it be the next wave of information revolution? After that, we had a nice panel discussion. The enthusiasm shown by the participant encouraged us to arrange today's lecture on the same topic, not the topic, actually same subject. As you may have seen in the flyer, Professor Thas Nirmalathas is the director of Melbourne Network Society Institute. He also provides the academic leadership to the Melbourne Accelerator Program, MAP. So I don't take much time to give a detailed description of his biography. You may log into Melbourne University website and see his entire biography. I should specifically mention he has written more than 400 technical articles and currently holding 2 international patents, and one provisional patent application in process. So I think he's most suitable man to deliver this kind of lecture. His research interest includes microwave photonics, optical wireless network integration, broadband networks, and scalability of telecom and internet service. So I would like to I cordially invite Professor Thas Nirmalathas, Director, Melbourne Network Society Institute, to deliver his lecture on Connected to the Expanding Internet as the Key to Realizing the Network Society. Please, over to you.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for the opportunity. I would also like to acknowledge that without the University of Moratuwa Department of Electronics and Telecommunications folks here, I wouldn't be, they gave me the opportunity to visit Sri Lanka here as part of their departmental interest in expanding and reviewing its own activities. It's a pleasure to return back to my home country, and I think you giving me a chance to speak about some of the things we do. So a little bit before I launch into Melbourne Network Society Institute is not a technology research institute. It is an interdisciplinary institute. What I do is try to facilitate research at the university that looks at how the society can exploit the connectivity provided to us by the rapid explosion of ICT, and see whether we can tackle some of the critical problems society faces through interdisciplinary research. So I work with surgeons, doctors, architects, mathematicians, and scientists, try and see how we can tackle that. So a lot of my work is about activating some seed project, and then they go and do interesting things after that. So that's one of the things. And I have a kind of sidekick, which I look at is interested broadly about entrepreneurship and how our younger generation should be at the heart of creating innovations and strengthening the economy. That's how I started the Melbourne Accelerator Program. Now it's 4 years and 25 startup companies out of the university going through it. And I think I see great potential here. Places like University of Moratuwa can play a significant role in launching Sri Lanka as a hotbed of innovation. With that, let me dive into some of the talk, and I think it is pitched at very high level, and if any of you want further details, I can provide you as part of the question time. The global population is been growing at steadily, but this particular chart gives us a particular interesting dimension of that, where the growth has been. If we distort the global population map based on the where the larger population lives, because it is important to see where it is, because you can see it's largely in the BRICS countries, in Russia, China, India, and in Africa. And where it's still, the connectivity is still not as good as, for example, Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka, I think, has more than 100% coverage through the activation of mobile networks. Whereas in some of these largest concentration of population, it's still closer to the half of it. It's close to about 3 billion population remains unconnected to the network around the world. And we can't see genuine progress in the society and also equity in the society until we connect that 3 billion people that remain unconnected today. So we have seen over the last 10 years, massive explosion of digital connections, largely activated by the rapid expansion of mobile communication technologies. What does it mean? If you look at the internet users, we have got only a few years ago, 2.1 billion. Very soon, we're already in 2016, 2020 is not far away, and most likely we will actually get there before 2020. So this is actually already a pessimistic estimate that we will have 5 billion people already on the network. If you look at it, there is a rush to create affordable broadband using satellite technologies. Either you take Google or other players betting big money on, and even Google Balloon project, for example. But they might not be still there in the technology. They might not have the right technology, right cost performance breakpoint in order to deliver broadband. But those investments are needed to connect those remaining 4 billion people. Until we connect, we can't really globally say we are at the same category. Otherwise, we will have a massive population which have everything, and there is other population which doesn't have anything, because internet connectivity is going to be the key differentiator, even more than the average income that you earn in terms of our future prospects. If you look at the social network, the way we interact with the world have changed since the social network has broken into our things. Now our younger generations look more close to the screen than to eye with any other people. If you look at it around the buses and anywhere, we tend to look around this rather than look at other people and look at interesting things. But that may not be the right thing. But what it is it provides them the rest of the world at their fingertips. Right? They can engage in simultaneous communication. We can be in a professional meeting. They can take an arrow band. They can send a couple of emojis that gives them the exact message they wanted to send it to their families and friends, without anyone noticing it or without anyone feeling it. But imagine next generation of social networks. You blink, it will send you a message exactly what you meant to the other party. So you can see you will start to get simultaneously control over multiple environments, wherever you are, which has interesting implications. How the governments operate will be different, because the people they need to serve are not the citizens within their geographical constraints, because the people who live outside will have digital influence on how things are done inside the things. So that's just for example. And local governments, the connectivity is going to be the heart of achieving the efficiency and the productivity gains we need. So the social network is not just for fun, putting Facebook and things. It's going to become the main tool for interacting with any services that you're going to have. All the services is going to look like social networks and apps, and how it's going to be done. This is a way of looking at different types of, I'm sorry about the resolution, it's in a big file, couldn't handle the network, so we have compressed it down. But anyway, you get an idea, different colors mean different branded social networks being popular in some of the things. Take China, despite the massive explosion of Facebook, the rest of the world, they managed to create their own social networking platforms for e-trade, Facebook, equivalents and things, because of their domestic economy was big enough to create, and there are other reasons why they needed to create, but leaving those sides, the control and other aspects outside. But you can see that type of networks will become important to design new services using the network. It's already 3 billion. It's not probably proportional to the population side of it, but very soon it will get out of it. And most likely we will be sitting in 2020 laughing at that number because it won't be 3 billion. It will probably exceed the population number by the time, because then you might think why there is more than the population being on the social network. We will see how that's going to be. The mobile network, this isn't particularly true for Sri Lanka. I mean, I can still vividly remember how long you have to wait to get a fixed phone telephone line in this country, regardless of how much money you have it, right? But the advent of mobile network, what difference it made. It in fact probably had a biggest role in everything that happened since then. Whether we like it or not, that actually had a biggest influence in bringing back the peace and as well as activating people on the things. That's, if you look behind the scenes, you will see what a difference a mobile network connectivity did to various things within the country. So you can see, if we can activate the mobile network to the rest of the population, then we will see massive growth. Again, you can see the mobile users already projected to grow well beyond the population of the globe. Again, meaning that there will be users of mobile phones, not people, but our agents who is using on our behalf. So how that is coming about is what exactly Indika presented in the last lecture very beautifully. I went through his YouTube, again, an excellent introduction to the IoT. And this is about, if we can connect everything in the world, not just us connecting in the work and in private context, but if we take everything that we built on this world, on this world, also everything that lives on the world is connected, then you can see these numbers will be astronomical. And someone had the gut to actually do the estimation, because these estimations can go out of whack. So I'm not relying on the numbers. I'm just here using the number as a way of showing the connection is going to be an order of magnitude bigger than the population which lives on this world. It seems like every fish and every crocodile is going to have a mobile phone, but it's not. The things that we wanted to control, the things that we wanted to influence, either our lives or we wanted to influence, will have to have a device connected with mobile connectivity attached to it. And beauty of it is, we would be able to seamlessly control and manipulate through the network that these guys are building, the mobile communication networks. So that is what people call the Internet of Things. What it means is things have now become connected to the general network. But the Internet of Things is not something dramatically appeared in the last few years. It's something that has been there within the engineering world for a long time, but we were building separate the Internet of Things for every application. We were building SCADA systems which collected traffic, we collected video and then sent it, and we control the dams, and we control the roads, and we control the lights, we control everything. It's been part of our engineering discipline for a long time. We call it different terms. We call it SCADA system very early on, then we call it sensor networks. This is just a way of kind of amplifying what's the potential economic impact and the societal impact of this technology could be by using this term Internet of Things. What it means is the same network which remains at the center of it and everything connects to it, we can program both the network and the end devices to realize interesting combinations of services and applications. So that's why this term has become a bit of a hype, bit of a hot technology, and there are serious opportunities for the economy as well. So the beauty of it, once you connect devices to the trees, the sensors, the roads, traffic signals, light bulbs, the projections, everything that you can think of into a device, that's if it makes sense, economically makes sense, obviously. And that means it will help you to digitize both the natural environment and our interactions with the built environment like these place, but also to the people that our interactions with the things. So everything is now digitized, captured by the network. So you can see where the story is going on, right? And the economy that we operate has a lot of paper trails, and we have a lot of transactions done in the manual with the human intervention and everything done. But once the whole ecosystem become digitized and connected to the network, you can think almost 90% of the economic activities is going to be one way or the other, it's going to be channeled through this internet. So that the internet and the connectivity to the internet, you can anticipate, will be more powerful than many other things we have as a way of establishing our lives, as a way of seeing our career projections, the way of seeing our wealth and everything, and the way of accessing government services is going to be whether you have it or not. So it is important we actually spend time thinking about, before this get off kind of on a track of its own growth, and private establishments establish their rule of game, how you're going to operate this. Society needs to understand what are the implications of this massive connectivity that is surrounding us, because it is going to change every part of our life, whether you like it or not. A person can misuse it, or a person can use it for the right purpose, delivering significant value to the society. So it is the question whether the IoT ecosystem is going to evolve slowly with rules of games established clearly so that nobody is taking advantage of it, but at the same time society is benefiting it. And there's also, we have to learn new rules of the game, how to engage, and in a way that we don't kill each other in the process of it. Both, and I think that's a very deep implication for the society to tackle. I'm not sure what is the status of discussion here in Sri Lanka about the net neutrality. It is a concept where the internet should remain accessible beyond the bounds of the commercial operators of the network. Is an interesting angle. There are pros and cons. The commercial operators pump billions of dollars in building this capability to the society, and they have to be given the way to manage, control, and manipulate that network so that it remains operational. But at the same time, that's the same network which is going to be either have or have not for the rest of the society. And therefore, they have a view to say what are the rules in which that network is operated and how the services are exploited out of that. So that is actually driving a lot of the international debate about this IoT. But that's what it means by network society. Everything surrounding our lives lives around the interaction that we have in this connected world. That's what we mean by network society. So it might be good to have a look at the take and a definition. Again, I think you triggered my point to define it, because in your talk you defined it. A society where networking influences every phase, every part of that society, including the processes, operations, outcomes of the economy, workforce, government, social fabric, and importantly, the culture of the place. And this is actually the original term of network society was coined by one of the founding fathers of internet, Emmanuel Castells. He's more of an anthropologist, but he had the societal impact of internet was carefully articulated by Professor Emmanuel Castells from Spain. He used to head Internet Studies Institute at UCLA, now retired back to Barcelona. It actually captures the essence of what the story that I was trying to build to go towards. So we all already see, without realizing all of this, we already see the transition happening right in our lives. We started with the internet, we go to internet cafe and dial up and connect to people or send emails or do some work. That's what the things. And then suddenly the consumer devices appeared, it's an evaporation of camera, evaporation of the fixed lines, everything put into one phone called smartphone. You get everything into one device, and that changed the way the consumer side of the lives were. Now, as we speak, it's already into the process. Industry is kind of embracing that technology in a massive way. For example, there is a mine in Australia which is completely automated and operated by the IoT. Every truck drives without a driver. It used to be maybe 10 technicians and many engineers hang around a drilling station make sure the drilling station drills and pumps it, and then truck driver comes and loads it up, and then this goes in a chain and with, throwing up dust and everything. A lot of OHS experts look around, everyone is safe or not, and there's that procedure, this process, people have to sign in and certify you trained to handle these. And then there's a foreman whole job is to just tick whether that person trained is the one operating or not, and otherwise you're just standing there and having a look at the whole operation. Now that one, it's all reduced to one person looking at 10 or 15 displays. Each drilling station is automated and operates in various parts of the mine, and another person looks at the whole logistics of the truck. Again, truck operates by itself. They just here to see a kind of discretionary overlay on the top of the management. So that is actually where the industry is seeking to create value by deploying Internet of Things as a way of achieving efficiency for a given dollar of investment they put into that operation. It is already happening. But once that goes into government and the way we live in our homes, the way we drive on the roads and the cars and everything, you can see it is going to be a society-centric. And that is the transition people are starting to hypothesize and deal with that implications of it. So this is just to break the talk, just a bit of a cartoon. We'll give you a bit of a time to have a look at it. So Internet of Things, what I was building up is everything is connected, but often, why would you bother connecting everything? All right, there has to be a value judgment, whether it actually changes something, does it improve our lives, and why would you waste a lot of money in setting up this unless it actually gives a tangible either quality of life improvement or a monetary value in terms of improved productivity or improved efficiency, the way that we can live. So it is not a rush to put everything connected with the devices, and there's lots of videos you can see on the internet will tell you as you walk into the kitchen, the fridge will tell you one thing, and kettle will tell you one thing, and the oven stove will tell you one thing. But that's not the really Internet of Things that we should be aspired towards. What we want is, around the world, as population is growing, we have a bigger pressure on every government, whether that is a United States government or a Chinese government or the Sri Lankan government. In some ways, when you look at the next 50 years of our country's life, the fiscal constraint to deal with the people's demand is the main issue every government is going to face. That challenge remains the same. The cost of providing the healthcare to that growing population, cost of providing the transport and the logistics in a way that we can move this population from A to B without damaging the environment. These are the challenges faced in some ways, not much different way to whether it is an advanced developed country or a developing country. The challenges remain the same. They have a fiscal constraint. Using that money that is available within the budgetary constraints of the country, they have to work out the most efficient way to provide the transport, logistic, healthcare, and government services in a way they can, that meets that cost and performance trade-off. So what we are about is coming up with Internet of Things applications, maybe by learning on toy applications, but develop serious application that will either give us a quality of life improvement or significant economic dividends for the countries. So why I titled the key as connectivity is because without these, many of us might be missing on things that otherwise might be possible. So the connectivity to the internet, I just wanted to emphasize it's important. Again, what is drawn in these type of pictographs may be misleading. It's not just connecting toilets or it's not connecting that tablet, but it is about what matters to you either as a person, as a government, as an industry, whether you're going to get the value, either quality of life improvement, productivity gains for an industry organization or a government in terms of human efficiency, how people work efficiently and contribute more to the economy given a small amount of investment. So what is Internet of Things is these sensors and devices connected, embedded within the places that we live, that is homes, this auditorium and the workplace. So, and a lot of other things like cars and planes and things that moves. And people, we will carry lots of devices. We will wear, this device tells me how good my sleep is. But, whether I'm interested in or not, that's different. But I'm just trying out whether it's fun or not. But, so there is lots of things going to gather data around our lives. There will be some things we will be able to control to turn on or off or do things differently. But all of them gets connected to the internet. And the internet, that what we're going to see, these operators is going to change the network into something like your smartphone. Currently, the network is designed with the purpose of providing a controlled connectivity between A and B. And they decide the rules of how it is designed, operated, how they can make value out of the services that you consume and then operate the network. It is that network itself is becoming the innovation place, where it's like the smartphone, where they basically set up the network, open the network so you can actually write an app and then actually use that network in a completely different way to another person that is going to use. In the past, that is not allowed because the network is not designed for that. You can do at the edges, you can interact with it, but you can never influence what happens inside the network other than the network operators themselves. But the network itself is becoming a programmable thing. It's like the smartphone, where many of you young people can write new applications that actually harnesses the data to these places and the connectivity to that, and then grab, process it, and push it back, control certain things, and people like it, they will subscribe to that app or service and get value out of it. I'm saying person, but it could be businesses, it could be hospitals, it could be local councils, it could be government agencies. So what it does give you is amazing amount of data because we have digitized every interaction of ourselves in this world, and that data goes into this network through massive storage of cloud computers grinding through that data, will actually give us a way to control and manage that network from wherever you are, and will give you a lot of insights, because we have not only your data, we have about 20 million of Sri Lankans' data coming in, so we can actually decide what they are wanting, how are they living at an aggregate level. We are not zoning into one individual level, but we are able to synthesize the information from everyone and actually predict pretty well what tomorrow is going to be. And so we can plan services, deliver that accordingly. So that insights and analytics is what business is dying to get hands on. You can imagine what was the first internet search engine look like. When you type in, it will give us something maybe likely to get a one useful thing for the search that you typed in the first page of it. That was when I was a graduate student, that's the internet search was for me. But today, Google, how can they improve? Because Google collected every search that you did and can use the data to prioritize and design it in a way when you search for it, at least one of the top 5 will have some relevance to your things, and it's been improving ever. It is the power of that massive data being synthesized to deliver and optimize the service that people want. So this will be useful for train scheduling, bus scheduling, whatever you can think of it, it's already been, people are trying and using it. What are we going for time? So this is this is not an advertisement for Cisco, but I think Cisco talks there is probably 2, maybe 3 major ecosystem behind IoT within the industry. Cisco is one camp, and then there's another camp, and there's another camp. But the Cisco is not alone. They have a big group of industry consortium. So they have attempted to kind of at least visualize how that ecosystem might look like, and abstracted the concept of Internet of Things through a reference architecture. This is not a recipe or a rule book. It just gives you a visualization of how different things going to use and how you can write innovation in every layer of it. You don't need to own anything in other parts of it. You might be able to be very successful enterprises if you can innovate in any of these layers and come up with the really smart product, the next Google of the world. And so basically, I think it's a laser diode. So on the bottom level, it's where all the edges, where the device is connected to our body or a car or a buildings. And they collect the data and send it up to the next level. The communication picks up. We might be overwhelmed by the number of devices connecting data. So we may not be able to take all the data into the network. We may have to filter some of them at the edge and discard all the rubbish, right? As you know, if we digitize our life, we already know how much is useful. So we have, the first game is to get rid of all the unuseful data. And so that's the first part called edge computing or fog computing people are talking about. Again, it is a very moving field. It's not yet developed fully, but we can do some computation at the edge device, clean up the data, or simply remove the identity of people, for example, because people are concerned about their privacy. And then move it onto the data accumulation. It will aggregate different parts of the network, send it into the network where the data will be aggregated, abstracted, and can split into different groups and tagged. So then your computing engines will work through for different application. It will produce different reporting, analytics, control. Then you can visualize that or collaborate on the data to drive value if you're operating in that layer. So again, you can see the bottom half of the layers roughly talk about data in motion, because data get captured, moved, and as it moves through the network, it gets filtered and the crap is taken over, and then the only good value is gold nuggets is pushed into the data plane, and everything else is about dealing with that massive data and then making it useful for some application. So is it really high? It seems to have lots of opportunities. We can change a lot of things, we can improve. The road looks quite rosy, nice. Anyone can pick what's this picture from. It's called Atlantic Ocean Road in Norway. It's an amazing road. I have never been there, but I've seen lots of photos of it. So you can see, I think we can ramp up. It looks like a big, massive amount of investment, both in startup and established businesses. In fact, established businesses are a little bit shaken by this opportunity, because this, if it's become, it will be the trigger point of startup innovation, because they don't need much resources, they don't need much access. As long as they are into the connected world, they can come up with ideas on every layer from a backyard with the two computers and a couple of people who have the understanding of innovation idea and a way to convert it. And that means there's lots of opportunity for Sri Lankans to shine well in this space, because once you understand the game, what's the value you're going to create, if you're innovative enough, you should be able to right in there compete with Silicon Valley startups. There are many applications people have talked about, and we will talk about some toy application we've been dealing with. They are not really the serious as yet, but they just show you the power of bringing everything and be learning through those applications so that we get ready to apply in realistic applications. It has been flagged as one of the disruptive technologies we're going to have in this area. And the impact people have tried to, all the management consulting companies have been busy because they can see they can make money out of this as well. So they've been busy on looking at economic prospects of different sectors, basically going them as giving the brief, look, this is an important technology. If you're not in, you're going to be miss out economy. And so there's been a lot of activity around the IoT. But is it really, the road is there? Have we got everything sorted out so the road is a smooth, nice, upward launch? People seem to think there is significant impact. So if you take a car insurance, for example, today you get, every one of you, depending on your car, depending on your value, you get a one fixed insurance policy, regardless whether 90% of the time you use short trip to work, car is locked up in the garage, not exposed to road conditions. Why would you pay insurance for sitting in your own locked up garage? But if we have sensors which actually can tell the car insurance company what will be my use in 2016, they should be able to give me a premium that is matched to what my use pattern is, rather than just lump it onto what is the average. So the actuary is going to be the biggest change all the insurance companies is going to be the biggest change, for example. Also, I mentioned about the mining and factories that is already happening. Local government agencies, it is going to give them a new way of interacting with both citizens, but also their services, garbage collection, cleaning, all that kind of things. So, and then you can go right through. Whether you believe in, whether Cisco's or McKinsey's predictions, you can be confident the number is big enough to think about it. Whether you like the numbers or not is not a matter, but it is big enough. If you have innovative ideas, you should be behind it. This is again another picture of seeing where the investment is going right now. So you can see it is, any sector you think there is investment, there is an IoT application case, and there people are pursuing it. A lot of the time it's just a talk and planning, but in many cases there is some early evidence of it. So the challenge on the other side of the road, society, we have to deal with it. One is, we are collecting data of every one of you. So who owns the data? So it is about our lives. Other people are collecting, and they're going to synthesize the data for designing new services. So are we as citizens, individual citizens, willing to trade off the data for the benefit that we're going to get? So the privacy perspective, you can see, if you look at my data coming out of this watch, which tells you that the sleep pattern, what I did on the bed, what I walked and when I ran, if you actually start plotting out consistently, you will figure out what I am up to very clearly, right? So that is actually an intrusion of my privacy without me telling anything, just by synchronizing my watch into the internet data and by sharing onto like-minded applications. I'm basically exposing myself for someone to be able to systematically analyze and figure out my daily routines and things there. That is a privacy issue for me. So things like that, we have to deal with it. And in many of the things you will see, everywhere you go, public transport, there will be video cameras taking a picture of you. So you feel that your interactions with everything is being digitized and captured. Therefore, you have a sense of your life is becoming very transparent. Everyone knows about it, right? If there are power meters at your electricity meters at your place, it's got a sensor called smart grid. Let's say if we go down to the path of smart grid, by looking into that, we should be able to see what's happened in the house. If you're not there, we will pick it up. If you do a strange party, we will pick it up, because there will be a big blip in the power use. And so you can see this notion of what we used to call it as this is our private lives within our four walls of our house could no longer be private lives. So there are that perspective as well. So we have to dealing with how to manage the data privacy versus data transparency if we wanted to do it. But there's always a good way of doing it. You can always give the right for people to see what their data is. You can get the consent, yes, I want this service, therefore I return the service. Again, you don't take their private data, you take this aggregates of private data and then work on the summary of the data rather than individual data. So there is never identifiable data is there. You can say, I will never allow a human to come in contact with the data. All the computers will do that data. That means it's not as a major threat to me, because if a computer is processing my data, I feel somewhat comfortable. But if a human is processing it, I feel somewhat kind of anxious. Who is that person might be and what might be into it? So this is the law itself is changing, whether data is being seen by a computer alone or data is being seen by human alone. So we will have two parts of the legislation very soon, which actually deals with the privacy of the data if it is seen by humans, if privacy of the data if it is seen by computers alone. So these are things getting ready for how to automate the data and things in life. And also there are some other implications of providing these massive connections that we talked about. It is great we can have it. Who is going to make money out of it? Because as we know, the internet is not growing massively, but not a lot of people are making money out of operating just networks. So they need to know, and there are people here behind the telecom operators know how difficult the network revenue model is. So they have to come up with services where people will be willing to pay for it or actually they're paying indirectly, they're making money out of adding value-added services, which also means how much money they have to invest to get this up and ready. If you imagine we have to put these sensors everywhere, they're going to need energy because they can either have to be battery powered or they have to be on an electricity grid. And we need to design things which can either harvest energy using solar or can operate in a very minimal battery power. They can go to sleep most of the time, wake up and do something and go to sleep. So there are a lot of energy management systems need to be developed. Bandwidth, you might think these are all just bursting out few bytes here and there, and so they're not consuming much. But billions of them, even whether it's a kilobyte data, becomes massive data. So it's not 7 billion anymore, it is 50 billion, who knows, it could be 150 billion, each of them sending few bytes. And we already know, people with the mobile experience will know, the SMS could potentially consume more energy if it is a massive flood of SMS than someone watching video, for example. We've shown our research that is the case. So sometimes narrowband communications, but many of them might cause many issues to the network. Most importantly, if you want to close the loop and then control something, lock the door, as soon as you move the car out and then nothing is key locked, then the latency might be an issue. Or you're driving a self-driving car, then the latency is an issue because it's being driven by the network. And the time to get information back and forth needs to be shorter. These are some of the challenges around whether we can ground the IoT revolution peacefully on the ground. People can use it, get money out of it, value out of it, and operate it. Maybe let me switch the gear and quickly show you some use cases at a very high level. This is again toy problems so that we can learn from what are the dimensions of all of the things I talked about before and see whether we can calibrate our research with that. So this is, most of you cricket fans, Melbourne Cricket Ground is a 100,000 stadium. So when there's a full match going on, you can imagine how many people are there. And there's always someone is not behaving properly. And with the growing world of uncertainty, the people who provide safety to these grounds are increasingly concerned about how do we understand the people density. When there is some patterns of movement, can they interfere very quickly to get the control? Because even if there is a small thing, evacuating 100,000 people out of 6 gates is a massive challenge. Because if once they start to move like a normal, the anthropology of us humans closer to animals operate, we just run, then everything will collapse and then things will cause a lot of issues. So they are obviously interested in knowing how to do that. So this is a number of cameras looking at how people are coming in, sitting and watching, enjoying the games. Our aim is not to identify who they are and then sort out anything. This is really simply to know how big the people are sitting, how people are moving, whether there is any strange pattern of movements among the crowd. So it's really about video analytics. We want to check the videos, analyze the videos, so we can develop where the crowd density is, where crowd could be moving, and if there is a problem, we know how to guide them through by turning on electronic signage, move this way, move this way, move that way, so that we can manage a coordinated evacuation in case of an emergency, for example. So these are some of the live pictures, some of the pictures came out of the cameras in a particular game night. And we developed some early, my team has developed some algorithms where they can actually get reasonably good estimation. They told me it is about 50% improvement to any other classification algorithms that is out there. We have verified these based on these actual images coming out of the MCG, but also there is a massive data set for any people who are developing UC San Diego. You can just download that data and you got lots of data set about people in public spaces and moving. You can apply your algorithms and see whether it improves. There are still lots of challenges in that space, but we can get some good idea how people are moving or what is the density of people, so the safety and security staff of the facility can use that to understand where people will move if there's something happens, or as something happens they can actually see it live moving. This is actually able to predict in parallel to the activity happening. So you can do this in flight. So we can also predict or understand where the crowd is moving, so we can see if there is someone trying to change suddenly, and then that will cause a lot of problems. We can actually have put people there at selected places so that they actually will move in particular direction rather than have any other hidden agenda by moving around, creating a bit of a havoc. So this is a Internet of Things approach to transport system and parking. Again, we wanted to help drivers, in particular here taxi, about how fast to move around a city. And this is a city Beijing data set. And so that data set is also, you can download, I think. And there is also data set from Singapore. You can look at it. Since this concept came about, there is now lots of startups in some of the major cities have popped up, taking advantage of these publicly available data sets. So lots of the governments are releasing this type of data sets so that people can develop innovative IoT solutions. So we looked at predicting where is the parking availability, and there is a similar study done in UC San Francisco, shown about 27% of traffic congestion can be removed by simply flagging where is the parking available to the drivers, because most of the drivers are going around in the city looking for a parking. Right? As they come into the city, if you're actually able to tell them here is a parking, then they actually will reduce the traffic congestions. So this is, based on that, I think there's probably about, you can easily count, there's probably about 30 to 40 startups around the world just looking at this parking solution. So this is where the taxis in Beijing going around, they worked out some back routes. They don't go straight routes, they always go around, and we can pick them up in the data, and when we program the machine learning, it actually picks up, they actually always warp around particular nooks and corners so that they can get to on time, and you can predict, and we've confirmed with the local people over there, it is very common, so the algorithm is capable of picking, the idea is to verify the algorithm is capable of picking up where the traffic paths are moving, and we can classify them. This is again parking availability. We've City of Melbourne in Australia and many cities now making their data available open. So anybody around the world can look at the data set and build the innovations to tackle certain problems. So we basically use their data sets, and we can actually predict parking around 5 hours ahead, pretty closely. But anything shorter than you get into seasonal variations and local demands and kind of things. Within 5 hours, we can predict parking availability pretty well now. So this is about all the parking places have in-ground sensors, and there's about 270 street blocks in the city. City is a very nice planned city of rectangular grid, so it's not there are some ease in dealing with this data than typically taking, let's say, a fort area here. But at least the algorithms are getting to a point where they can actually have very good accuracy in estimating and predicting it. So this is more of an environmental pollution side of it. So the particulate matter is basically tiny chemical particles that's either pumped out of the cars or even the ocean wind salt sprays can also have particle matter, and that basically comparable to or below human hair dimensions. But if they actually consistently get into your body, in particular lung, can trigger significant issues in the lung conditions. And the common diseases are asthma, bronchitis, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, or COPD. World Health Organization predicts about 4.6 million people die simply because they didn't have any warnings. They're going to have this trigger, and then they're subject to that. So in terms of the dimension, the particulate matter is characterized by PM1 is 1 micrometer, PM2.5 is 2.5 micrometer, and so on. So they're small enough to penetrate most of the part of the lungs and normally get absorbed into bloodstream. That's when they do the biggest damage. And there is it's not a big percentage, but it's around less than 10% of the people can have significantly drastic reaction to something like that. So there are many cities are starting to put at least sparse sensors so they can see what is the nature of the particulate matter in the atmosphere, and therefore they can respond to that. So we've got in Melbourne, we've got a number of different places. We've activated these particulate matter monitoring, and it gives us a little bit of idea about where the main spread of the particulate matter within the Melbourne city area. This is a partnership with EPA Victoria. And you might say why the Department of Defence is interested in, because the same sensors can pick up if there is a biological attack or something, they can also pick up. So they're interested in seeing how these civilian data sets can be used to look at what's something happening. So the idea is that it will actually give you spatial and temporal in time mapping of how the pollution is developing in the city. So you can start to control the pollution by either putting certain road restrictions or traffic restrictions if things are getting above certain level where it's going to be have a massive widespread attack on people's health. Then these are things cities like in China starting to use more regularly as a way of developing their environmental guidelines. This is again, cities have, for a long time architects have known that lining the streets with the trees not only adds to the atmosphere and the livability of the city, but it actually changes the environmental footprint of that city. And it is known as urban heat effect. And you can see, we Sri Lankans know, most of our houses in the rural settings are surrounded by trees, because despite how hot it is, we can always reach out to the shadows of the trees to live reasonably, almost like an air-conditioned life. But this is the solution to city again, to re-green the cities so that they can take away use the urban heat effect as a way to manage some of the environmental issues or sustainability of the cities. So Melbourne had an architect believed in surrounding the Melbourne with the parklands, but they went broke before completing most of the parks. So there is some parts of the city has parks, but other places they didn't have enough money out of the gold rush to build the rest of the parks. So it is heavily built. But what we are putting is kind of putting an experimental IoT with the city to understand how the temperature fluctuation. We've noticed about 2.5 degree difference in that area to rest of the city. And with the particulate matter and other things, City of Melbourne is now launching with this kind of studies a major greening strategy. So where they encourage the trees in the buildings and the vertical gardens and things like that to try and have more foliage inside the city as a way of dealing with some of the environmental things. So we're kind of working with them to develop that greening strategy of the city. So this is this urban forest monitoring. You can see we've kind of built the visualization engine for them. On the left-hand side, you've got some sensors around the parklands, and then here is we can basically present them the dashboard, which sensor, what value is, and they can actually already see over the data we collected. There is around 2 degree temperature gradient between that part and the rest of the part of the cities. Anyway, a bit of summary to the Institute, I guess. So you can see why we're interested in the network society. It's more broader than the IoT. We look at around how we live in that kind of networked, painted picture of the things. We also understand how the economy of that network society will be different to what we have today, and also what are the infrastructure that is needed to facilitate that both economy and the living interactions. So these are some other projects that I think I talked about COPD as a major disease. Again, by throwing a bit of a sensor and a bit of an exercise machine, we can help them to have the appropriate training for their lungs to get to, so that the COPD doesn't become unmanageable in their own homes, rather than being forced to go to specialist centers and have half an hour session, pay thousands of rupees for that consultation. This is something they can have it if they have a treadmill, they have a normal smartphone. This app can be downloaded and the clinicians can look at it and send some advice. They just do that exercise and they can keep the disease under control. This app that we developed is now being trialed by Penn State University medical researchers as well. So we're doing a trial in US as part of this work. This is again what is possible on the other things, about things that we need to make the end of the network smarter. This is a little clip-on device that goes on to your smartphone, on which we can do very advanced biomedical testing in future. This is a kind of lab on smartphone idea. There's a lot of projects around. The idea is it reflects the light coming out of the flash into a circuit, and that actually shines the samples, biomedical sample. It could be a saliva or a blood that you put onto that little receptacle. And then the camera is now, what, 16 megapixel in some of those latest smartphones. That should have enough resolution, if we have the optics design in front of it, to be able to do certain diagnostics, like a lab diagnostic, right on your smartphone. So it could be useful in midwives and nursery, the nurses going out to remote areas and could potentially have a lot of health things. So we're looking at that. So our focus is on building nanosensors, nanoscale sensors for that, but this is just a prototyping just to demonstrate the value of it. So it's not everything is engineering. Here you can see this is we devising this interaction environment where virtual reality, the people with quadriplegic, the people who don't have any control below the hip size, they basically chair bound for the rest of their lives. But if they don't do certain breathing exercises, their life goes rapidly down and basically die, because they're very prone to pick up heart failure, lung failure very quickly if they don't have that routine exercise. It turned out if they actually practice singing, it's probably the best way to exercise their lungs. Rather than, because they actually also very much, you can imagine, their lives have been completely changed, and they very much have very negative outlook on their lives. If they don't have some ways pull them into the training framework, they will normally have a deteriorating lifestyle. So this is just to put a virtual reality goggle, then immediately see they in a band singing. So as the music can come from internet, different people can contribute, and they almost like in a band, they can sing and practice, and it actually gives them the very deep things. I think we're getting to the end of the times. We also, at the moment, is trying to build an experimental test bed for trying out these type of ideas, and we're putting in agriculture, transport infrastructure, and healthcare type of areas. I guess in summary, the digital connectedness is helping us to realize kind of possibilities offered by the network society. But it is not without dangers, it is not without challenges. It's got a lot of issues with privacy and the transparency that society has to grapple with it, and the sustainability of building this network of massive connected devices and then operating it so that someone will make money out of it, and at the same time having innovative services on top of it, remains the kind of the billion-dollar question, how to do it. So with that, I will leave it. So.
Thank you, Professor Das. So we'll have a small panel discussion. So I would like to invite Engineer Indika Valpita to conduct that.
Thank you very much, Thas Nirmalathas. I think we had a very, I would say, eye-opening lecture on Internet of Things as well as applications. I think we had a session a few weeks back on the introductory part of Internet of Things. But today's lecture, I think we went beyond the introductory part. We went to a lot of applications, and this lecture gave us a very clear idea where the world is heading and what we can do. I think to start our panel discussion, I would like to invite Professor from University and Professor Thas would be able to come on the stage. One key aspect that was highlighted was that it has to be anything that we do just to improve our quality of life or have some economic value. In that sense, I think I would like to pose a first question to Professor Michel. At this moment, what is the availability or affordability of this kind of applications for the normal public? What do you think about that?
So I think in the probably about last 24 months, we've seen a lot of devices for connected homes where you can try to apply this to your home's environment. But the price seems to be excessively high. I mean, it hasn't really affected the economic point of that. But at least, certain, above certain economic conditions, people might be able to afford that at least an experimental thing. But I think there are solutions in the farming sector and things where they able to apply these sensors for either better crop management or at least being able to check where the plants are having problem and then apply fertilizer to only those parts. For example, that actually seems to be a very simple economic case to demonstrate. I think technologies are reasonably at affordable price, I think, right now. And I think with the volume coming up, we're going to very quickly go down to that area. So smart farming, for example, because at the moment, a lot of people are very anxious about over-fertilizing things, putting lots of fertilizers on average. But if these technologies can give you very specific
certain common features. One of the things that we find kind of confusing is that there are no standards as such. There's a lot of commercial products with different standards even when it comes to physical layer. There are things and we don't know where it is going and which should have a good future or there will be new things coming up. So that faces a lot of difficulty on in developing applications when you look at the long term. If you do something now, will it still be applicable in a few years down the line? That is one of the things
I think this is, as I said, there was a lot of hype early on in the last 5 years that triggered a massive rush to develop everything in IoT. I think when I was recently giving a lecture on Indica gave us a year before kind of guest lecture to some of our students, and I looked at a quick survey of how many protocols have been designed just so that a sensor A can talk to the network through another actuator called B. There's so many different ways you can do it now. So that is actually wasting a lot of time and effort in that. I think that's what people like Cisco was trying to do, was try and put a circle around the industry, at least part of it, and trying to influence their kind of way of doing it. But what I think the standard bodies, IETF and IEEE, really has to step up to clean up some of these things. And I think the reference model, I welcome it. The reason is that it at least tried to abstract, here is the complexity. There's a lot of other protocols were designed purely from supporting communication purposes, but it is not written with the view of the whole ecosystem how it operates. So my gut feeling is with the industry players like Cisco and others releasing, I think there's another European version of reference architecture that was released pretty much within 1 week apart each other. And but I think they will have to meet at the standard bodies and then try and strike some kind of common thing. And I think in some ways we also as academics need to engage in the standard body, but which is very time consuming and often very expensive for academics to be involved in. But the industry definitely has to pick up that part of streamlining standards, because at the moment we have too many different views.
I think even during our last discussion, this was a kind of a question that came up on the standardization side of it. And my next question, I would like to put to Jasper. How would you think that the students and the developers feel will, how they follow this area interesting, what is the interest among the community, what are the any specific applications that they are thinking of, how do you see on this particular subject?
Yes, I want to give a comment on the previous one aspect regarding the lack of standard for IoT. Probably one of the reasons could be like unlike many applications, IoT is so across so many domains, so many applications, and it might be very difficult to abstract, as you say, how to do that communication. And so you're talking about maybe not just 1 billion devices, we're talking about 50 billion devices, and 50 devices in so many different applications. So whether we can actually abstract it in such a way that that all these devices can communicate with a particular protocol is very unlikely. So what I actually would probably just again feeling where I should be going, it could be more domain specific type of protocols or standards might be coming out, but all based on Thas pointed out channel setting bodies, how fast they are, and consequently slow. Regarding the student interest, I think we just started actually teaching IoT and we started teaching that, and there's a lot of interest obviously, but then again I actually also see like the need for give some kind of guidance, because what I have nowadays saying insurance sector is IoT is anything connected to connectivity. So anybody need not be a person need not be an engineer as such to come up with an IoT idea. So all what you need actually is you send something and you want to send that information to someone else, probably monitoring or maybe coding, and you can actually get that idea implemented to someone else as well. So there could be million people coming up with ideas, but like so the essential commercial potential of such an idea is how do we take that idea, maybe a simple idea, all the way up to the way when the dollars or rupees are generated. Just having an idea actually is not going to be sufficient. But the problem is, again, as I said, it's very cluttered. So many people are thinking in so many different ways. Something is connected, and something, as I said, like, you can sense anything and send it to another place and do something monitoring and acting on that one. So it's like ideas are sort of pretty much, I would say, like opportunities are endless. But that's why actually it's important for us to give some kind of guidance, and particularly from Sri Lankan point of view. What I would actually say is something that would point out the culture, where Sri Lanka actually is really suffering. I do think that we have a serious problem of productivity. Serious problem of productivity. I think in terms of agriculture there is a bit of low productivity, and even I think what the service done by the department shows that in general the productivity actually in Sri Lanka is very, very low compared to some other countries. So how maybe in the country too, or maybe in other places, whether we can actually come up with some sort of IoT devices, or some applications where productivity of certain operation can be improved. So there's a quick visible gain in that process. So because of that, actually, I think maybe a challenge on us to pick certain very important application domains where there is significant impact on the way that we foster improving productivity, or maybe, for example, like how do we really improve the yield of agricultural farming, the particular acre, for example, and minimize the use of fertilizer. Identify a few areas and probably promote those areas among like interested people to want to try it, so that we can see at least some sort of a focus activity. Otherwise, I believe, just again just a hunch, that it will be very scattered set of effort, because IoT, as there is no specific area, so scattered, and there's a danger in that scattering as well, because we are not focusing on anything. So so what I would probably like to do is actually, rather than focusing on so many different areas, pick a few areas where it's really important for Sri Lankan society in terms of maybe productivity, farming, or like areas where there is a potential for significant step increases, and then promoting them to see if there is possible to find some solution.
I think it's very correct, isn't it? Because I think during last discussion also, one very senior person from the audience, he was highlighting the same issue of productivity in the sector in Sri Lanka. Especially he was lecturing about this over-fertilizing, over-watering, this issue. He has a number of years of experience in this agricultural business. So I think, as you very correctly said, we as a country, we have to identify some specific areas where we get the maximum impact on utilizing this kind of development. And the other hand, you were touching on the network connectivity and affordability of the technologies. I think on that ground, Sri Lanka is in a very good position, because the availability and the reach of broadband networks in Sri Lanka has reached to a very high level. And if you take the broadband pricing, if you look at the ITU statistics, the Sri Lanka has the lowest pricing for gigabyte of data that we have consumed. So I think in that sense, we are in a very good position to do the connectivity. But I think we have to work on the other layers of the ecosystem. With this one, I think
I think one of the things, as you roll out Wi-Fi and there's a lot with I think you actually make sure that it actually has additional capacity to attach sensors and other gateway modes. You will see very rapidly you can turn on IoT backbone immediately and for other people to innovate.
very good, very good. And you were talking about the burst kind of application, but it is millions of billions of devices. Good. Yeah.
The areas that actually we can really focus on, I think one of the biggest areas where we are losing productivity is transport. Transport in Sri Lanka. I mean, how much time do we waste in going from point A to point B? So we can actually come up with some kind of IoT applications where we really reduce the traveling time somehow, getting some class information. That would be sufficient at least for 1 year to start.
I think from this sector we got very good hint from Professor, given that some of the countries have even opened up their statistics or the data with regard to this traffic situation. So I think it's a very good chance if some of the developers or the audience can look at some interested parties are there. I know that people are watching from the live streaming of the live webcast, as well as this lecture will be available later in our website. So I think it's a very good area, and it's a national program as at now, and to try and develop solutions and applications there. With this one, I think we will open the discussion to the floor. Take this chance, because they are the people very high and the academics who are present here today. I think with this audience, with this panel, I think you can ask a lot of your questions and get them clarified. I would open the questions to the floor.
When you talk of the topic of devices, what I have observed in Sri Lanka is most of the devices go outdated very soon. So, not like in good old days, where I had the Bambi, the toasters, I'm still using after 30. There is a cuckoo clock still working, definitely. But these, most of the devices, very soon go outdated, and I think the main problem is the disposal of this e-waste. I would like you to announce that handling the e-waste, especially in Australia, because our problem is we can't even handle the other waste. The entire country is full of waste. So especially this e-waste, I think is a little bit poison. So I would like to ask that. The other thing is, of course, one of the eminent professors mentioned about our.
I think you touched on some of the things that I was kind of indirectly saying, that the sustainability challenge of this industry itself is huge. We looked at some application, then I'll go back to some of the comments you link up with the agriculture, for example. In order for us to take a fresh produce and then use some of these technologies, we need to be able to put sensors, let's say for example, a fresh produce so it actually gets to the market without getting wasted. Today we about waste 50% of the fresh food that we produce in the world simply doesn't go anywhere. 50% of our fresh food production is wasted. So that's not just a Sri Lanka's problem, global problem. We have 50% of the fresh food needed. But within the next 10 years, we will have to find what we consume today, factored by food, we have to find within the next 10 years. Otherwise, major parts of the population will be going starved. If we wanted to keep the consumption at today's rate, we have to double the production, food production, within the next 10 years in order to just meet the consumption. It's not to get above it, just to meet the consumption. So it is important to connect the farmers who's producing with the market that is wanting in the right time at the right price. And in some ways, I think Professor Pascal's mention of productivity is the overall that chain. It is not just about on-farm productivity, but it's also about how the ecosystem of that farmers have access to can get the right price and the right thing so that goods can be transported with a very good logistic network and into the people who can buy at a price that is not a loss to the farmer. So it is not a very one single view. It is not just one farm productivity, but it's the whole system of productivity. So that IoT can do it, but it needs to come to at the right price for the farmer, right price for the food logistic, so that they are not taken for a ride by some monopolistic companies who currently, for example in Australia, 2 supermarket chains control the farmers. And we actually funded a project just to disrupt that by having a food chain network. So farmers have an online network, they can put it up, what is the excess stuff they have, and then immediately a third party can negotiate and come and get the product which is excess supply. It is changing the dynamics where the main part of the purchase channel is controlled by certain monopoly companies. So the farmers not only getting rid of, can't sell it, but they also don't have the ways of selling it. This type of system can help. But I'm not saying it will help, can help. Secondly, the e-waste we talked about, it is an important part because we couldn't find a cost-performance trade-off where we can recycle some of the disposable sensors and to be able to also operate a sensor with the battery power or that fresh food logistics system to make sense. Not yet, but we're working on it trying to achieve that. So the e-waste is not just a problem here, it's also the same problem in Australia. We only managed to have a mobile phone recycling there, but it's only very recently. But this is going to be worse than mobile phones because people are going to come up with very cheap devices with all sorts of nasty batteries. And if they want to recycle it, that will be far more efforts needed. So you really nailed that issue. Sustainability challenge of building these is actually a lot of people are not looking at it. It needs to be looked at. And we looked at some of the energy implications of that, which is again leads to e-waste as well, not also e-waste, but it's also just finding what the right source of powering these things without putting the planet.
I have 2 questions. First one is
to widely invest a lot of money and put things. They've been worried about if they put a hardware investment. Can they get flooded out by new protocol that will not be matched? So they have to develop the hardware with the view that any protocol can be matched. So to certain limitations, obviously, every product will. So I think there is a way forward for the industry, but I think it would be good to have some agreement for this.
I will come up with the data question. This other question I asked was about this concern about the carrier companies and etc. What's the issue that they may stop us using the
High issue, okay, yeah.
With regard to privacy,
My question, second question was, first question was answered very well. I think the example of this is Wi-Fi. Yeah. Very good one, right? A, B, all this stuff. The second question was about, we are using this already. We are using the system, networks and everything. What is the concern? Will the companies like Dialog will stop us using that? That's my question.
No,
there was a discussion about...
I don't think stopping will be answered, because the thing is like, the same thing came when the Skype came. So we had traditional international calls, the service voice telephony, and it was hit actually for Skype is a hit for the any mobile operator and this kind of operator. So our international revenues got down and the revenues were less. So, but on the other hand, with this kind of technology, there are a lot of other applications where the data usage is increased. We have seen earlier with the advancement of technology, a person had used monthly, say for example, 500 MB of data. Now they are using maybe 6 gigabytes of data. That's how their consumption. In that sense, the revenue is still there with the operator or the carrier.
Single Abhikar.
Abhikar, okay. True. I hope it answers.
And like to add something about the protocols, when it comes to IoT, there are possibilities that we have not thought about in more conventional things. You can have your Wi-Fi sensor in your home and collect data and all that. But for example, a thing like, say, you get an email, and then your table lamp blinks when you get an email. There has to be an integration of various things to make that happen, and that is some of the things that the IoT protocols are looking at.
Any other questions? Probably maybe having some questions in your mind. It's a rare chance that you get this kind of panel and can raise any questions and clarify it. Because this is the second lecture on this series from Thas. Yes, we try to educate about IoT and then take this discussion, I think Arjuna will explain, to the next level and into society, and we will try to get this discussed everywhere and create platforms even here where they can apply.
Regarding all like these wireless sensor networks, for example, that is costly optimization. Like people actually might look at the protocols in a completely different manner, not standard hierarchical, layer type of thing, the mixture of everything.
It will be more relevant with, I think, 5G comes with the direct mix of.
I think the one
Actually, I am having one question regarding this IoT protocol. The latest LTE broadband devices coming supporting the UPnP protocol, but the old devices by default is enabled, but the latest devices, this protocol is by default disabled. So the reason is the vendors they are saying because it has security vulnerabilities is disabled, but will we have any ways to improve these security features in this protocol?
So the one thing that I didn't touch on is the security implication of this. You heard about the recent media about some two guys got control of a Jeep vehicle in the US, managed to navigate the Jeep out of roads and took away. So this is a kind of exaggerated example of how security could be an issue. So I think depending on the IoT application and the seriousness of how IoT could potentially put either people at risk or the network or application at risk, I think security needs to be improved, and I think people are only starting to think how to protect these very low dumb devices kind of things in a way that they don't cascade in a big way to gain access into a complicated network. So some people are overreacting and saying, look, there is a little vulnerability, I don't want to open the network yet, because the network is not ready to pick anything like that. But I think the security need to be handled in a different way. Today, bank credit cards, for example. Many banks will say we don't have a problem. You understand? But they have massive problem, right? Every minute they have massive fraud hits coming through the network. But they will never advertise or hit because it is in the interest of their business to tell the customers there is nothing wrong. What they do, they undertake a big insurance policy, and then that insurance will pay them back any losses they incur. But they protect the customers. They say, if you buy any transaction on credit card, if it found to be a fraud, we will reimburse you. So this is the kind of mindset that some people are thinking. They have to come up with both process as well as system security to deal with it. And the other thing is the security, if the network becomes programmable, and once they may actually give better security, because as soon as they see some little weird action, they will pick it up. Then they will shut that port on. So rather than being very alarmed and not turn on any of the devices with that protocol, we will be able to detect, let them open, and then we will be able to tell who is right, who is wrong, and we basically pinpoint and then turn on. So it will be a very short-lived attack with very little outcomes and very little impact for overall thing. So there's one view that maybe is going to open everything. The other issue is that we should incrementally advance the security to be able to deal with it. But there are also kind of out of the left side, left thinking kind of security work also going in parallel. So around the world, if you notice, there was probably about in the last 12 months, massive investment into security related research. So I just prompt into that first.
So you had a question.
I think we should talk about security. My name is Kumar Particulate. I'm a communication engineer by profession. First of all, thank you very much, Professor Nirmalathas, for your excellent presentation, and also I would thank for the panel members for sharing their views and giving us good points. I have a few comments and a few questions. As a layman, not as a technocrat, because one is social aspects. Because we have now been a developing country, we have marginalized people. Because, of course, when you get into our profession, of course, no doubt, we have to lead the future. Network society and IoT is the future, so no, we can rescue. But the social, how affect the social and marginalized. Then, it's a question, it's not a question as a layman. Then, second one, now see when all these over-the-top services, OTTs, like Viber, Skype, all those things came into see during the last 5-6 years. So a lot of operators, they face huge problems, particularly in the European countries, not in the developed countries, particularly in this part of the world. So they face a lot of problems. They start losing revenue, and they have to take a lot of precautions. Still, they are facing a lot of problems, even at me. Similarly, you mentioned in one of your slides that the IoTs will have some revenue generation of the order of 13 trillion within the next 10 years. So what effects that will have, what industries that will affect, similar to the telecom operators in the case of OTTs. Third one, sorry for that. Some of my questions were answered in the part of the discussions. Third one, now in Sri Lanka, I saw you have found solutions, your solutions in Australia and some other country, UK and all. Can you sort of give your views for some solution? Now, the biggest problem we face today, now particularly the aging population like me, so not the young people. So the traffic, now for instance, when I was working, back in Sri Lanka. That was it's about 20 years back. I used to come home to now for my lunch from 4. It took only 15 to 20 minutes. I go back to office. After I'm the lunch, it's 15 minutes. But today, from 4 to now, I don't take any other place of the same. It should take 1.5 hours, 2 hours. Can you give us a solution, one of you, for this traffic problem? Because the police people are trying their best. But now, not like those days, we don't travel much, but sometimes I come to IES or once a week or so. I go somewhere for some function, maybe once a month, I don't attend much. But whenever I go, I find it extremely difficult. Can you give a solution? Can you give your views or give some solution to the authorities? Because, not to us, because we have to do it. You are people, you can do some solution. Then I have those are 3 questions. Then I have few comments on others. I quite agree with Engineer Thas. In our country, the biggest problem, I don't challenge anybody. Of course, I appreciate your views, but the biggest problem, the farmers, they produce, but they are unable to sell. Not only vegetables, but everything. So it's a problem. It's a problem for us. We are a poor country. We have seen our Europe countries manage these things. It's a problem. Actually, it's a big problem. So it's a comment. I don't think we can find a solution for that. Similarly, e-waste, another comment. In the developed countries, they have been successful to some extent by recycling. But in our country, apart from e-waste, we have other ways where we cannot find solutions. It's a big problem. So this is just a comment. I don't think we can find a solution for this, being a developing country. So those are my comments. But for the 3 questions about the social aspects, about this OTT, how it will affect the industry, like how OTT is affected the telecom industry. For the 3rd one, whether we can give a solution for this.
Yeah, it's always like this in these panel sessions. The last person to ask normally comes with a loaded question. Fires one after the other. There's no way to respond. So I can only put my head down and say, look, it was a fully loaded question. But let me try and break through some of it. When I mentioned about the social, I think, if you remember the statistics I mentioned, out of the 7 billion population, 3 billion today remain unconnected to the internet. And they are the people who have not. And you're marginalized people, right, sit there. And it is, I think, as we go forward, when governments see the value, the purpose of delivering services through this in a cost-effective way than the usual way they have provided, they're going to be even more marginalized if they don't have network. So I would definitely see a region where equitable access to the internet in these marginalized communities have to be addressed. Both commercial players and governments have to partner to provide some kind of equitable access to the internet and mobile connectivity to all the communities, regardless of what the economic background is. And I think it is in the vested interest of network operators and things to have them participate in these rather than remain outside as marginalized and become even more marginalized in the total. So, this is where a lot of the investment is going around connecting Africa and other places. But I think right here also there needs to be some social responsibility program to bring either by making certain Wi-Fi or certain connectivity in these marginalized communities to have them have internet access and connections and mobile connectivity to do it. But without that, I think I can't. I mean, we are operating in this particular technology. I think your question is loaded with a much broader social brush, and therefore our solution is only addresses in that connectivity part of it. I'm sure that needs to be addressed in other parts of it as well. The second question was over-the-top services, and I think it's not just the developing country operators, but international operators have got a major hit. But they so weathered that the wave of change. Some of them have been long enough, had significant profits earlier on without the over-the-top, and therefore they were able to spread it. Others have evaporated out as well. There was a massive disruption in the industry. But over the time, the traffic shifted to data, and then they started benefiting from data services to me. But I don't know whether, I think maybe people have indicated in comments what is the dip like, or what is the growth of the data, whether it's leveled up. But most of the curve I see from people like the largest network operators like AT&T and others, and China Mobile and others, they at least see a flat network revenue rather than anything yet in a big way. But they might have seen an exponential revenue in the past, but they see a flat revenue in the network almost now. So I don't have a clear answer to that way that game will be played. But my gut feeling is all the telcos I see, this will create value-added service they can charge, or at least earn a portion of that revenue the other people who run the service, not from the customers, from the people who run the service into the network operator. So this is going to be only made possible if there is a shared revenue model for people who run the network and the people who will run the IoT and the people who will benefit from IoT. This is not going to be open floodgate for free sky type of service. That's my personal view, but I could be wrong. And the last one was?
Third one, whether it could, you could give us a solution to the authorities.
I wouldn't claim to be smart enough to give you that solution to that complex problem. But Professor Pascal just mentioned before that traffic optimization could be a problem, but it could be a solution. But it needs to have the infrastructure to do it. And it is just emerging what is the best way to track traffic in that kind of complex environment. But maybe Dr. Pascal might have.
I think the part of the solution actually would be because how do we really minimize the investment on sensors and the logistic issues associated with deploying the sensors. So that as long as actually we find a solution for that, cost-effective deployment of sensors, traffic sensors, and handling the logistic issue. I mean, if we can handle that part, I'm sure that the software guys can come up with a lot of applications. The problem will be how do we really deploy the sensors in a cost-effective manner, in a manner that will be long-lasting as well. You cannot actually replace the sensors all the time. This would be a bit of a logistic challenge, but I think at least on more solution will be helpful.
I want to respond to the other farming questions. You see the farming problem that you mentioned, both of you mentioned, it actually lies in not in the productivity of the farm as I mentioned, it is in the food logistic part. Can you connect the farmer and the person who is willing to buy the product in a time and effective way they can actually close the transaction? At the moment there are many obstacles. I think this connectivity can be a solution. That's what we explored. In a particular limited case, we fired up a food sharing network where we connected the farmer with a middleman who can actually collect the farming product and make it available to where the demand is. So what we need to focus on creating an effective food logistic network so that actually we can connect the farmer with the market in a better way. And I think that is lacking in a lot of areas. That doesn't need too much. Again, by having an internet connectivity, and there is very much readily available technologies to be put, but the farmers have to be educated to be able to use it, and to be, or you have to find a middle player who can collect at one place and then distribute it. So it's a food logistic issue which is being suggested as the biggest impact if we can get it right. Partially to address that 50% of the produce being wasted, I said, and also partially, a lot of the farmers are not getting the money they deserve. Many farmers are walking out of the farms because they can't make their ends meet. Partially, either they're not selling the goods, they get very waste, or they're not, the other person buying it has a monopolistic control, so they dictate the price. You can only sell it at this price. Because the farmer doesn't have no other buyer, this is the only truck comes to your farm and then collects it, you just accept what they pay. They pay you very little, and then they go and sell it to us, then massively amount of price. So this needs to change. The only way to do that is to create that effective sharing system. So the farmers know who else 50 kilometers away needs this. so they can get that market as well. Creating access to market through this type of connectivity solution will address that. So I wouldn't say that there is no solution. It can be solved by today's technology. It doesn't need any fancy thing. On farm, yes, we might need some new services, but creating the market or connecting it to the market doesn't need any new technology. It's just an existing adoption of existing technology. In a way, farmers can consume it, and we have third parties in there as a vested interest. They can make money out of it on top of what farmer is doing. I think it is solvable, but it needs stakeholders to get together.
Yeah, that's actually that was only a comment, not a question. It's only a comment because this is what I have seen. Because I agree with him. Because they are unable to disclose their products. And also the prices, if you go to any of the Sri Lanka Economic Center, I have one just nearby, Narayan. The prices are very high. Actually, I grow all my vegetables in my garden. Most of the fruits I have from my garden. I don't buy much. 90% of time self-sufficient in vegetables and fruits. I grow my own now. From last year I was not working. That's what I spend my free time growing. I grow all the type of vegetables. Actually, you can grow anything. You can grow what is grown in a country. Everything can be grown in Colombo. Now I grow everything. And therefore I started it. Because I don't want to. I can afford to be, but why should? But there is the system. It's only a comment, not a question. It's the system. So the system, I don't think we all can find solution for this current system because this is just a comment on it for the farmers. But I sympathize with them. Actually, I pity them.
We have the same problem in Australia. Two supermarkets dictate the price to the farmers.
I think we had a very good discussion. So time is almost 12:30. So I would like to thank Nirmalathas as well as the firm for being in the panel, and I think we had a very nice presentation today. And I would invite the Medical Engineers Committee to take this from your thoughts.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Thas Nirmalathas, a member of the Mechanical Engineering Sectional Committee of the IESL, and I'm here with great pleasure to give the vote of thanks on behalf of the Mechanical Engineering Sectional Committee for this productive lecture. Connectivity to the expanding internet as the key to realizing the network society. First and foremost, I would like to express our deep sense of gratitude to today's presenter, Professor Thas Nirmalathas, for sharing his valuable knowledge and experiences with us despite his busy schedule in Sri Lanka. I would also like to thank Dr. Ajit Dastur and Professor Dilip Elias of the Department of Electronics and Telecommunication Engineering, University of Moratuwa, for properly moderating and carrying forward the discussion on Internet of Things as our panel. Much important knowledge we gathered from today's lecture I will summarize as below. In a fully networked society, we will be able to digitize every interaction with a built and natural environment. Things can be controlled by data gathered from people, places, and knowledge gathered by analytics, insights, control, and management for the sake of addressing the challenges faced in sustainability and public safety, as well as agriculture, food production, and healthcare. So, the increasing connectivity is the key to the Internet of Things. Mapping these points in your mind, I am going back to my vote of thanks. A special thank goes to Engineer Arjuna Manapere, Chairman of the Mechanical Engineering Sectional Committee, for his leadership and proper guidance in organizing this event. In short, I would say he is the flywheel of the Mechanical Engineering Sectional Committee engineer. Senior Engineer Indika Balkitagi deserves a special mention for introducing Professor Thas to the IESL, in other words, Internet of Professions. All the ISS staff, especially Mr. Raman, Mr. Sadhu, Mr. Kalana, and Mr. Jamal from IT department, and Mr. Liude, manager operation, has strived hard to successfully organize this public lecture. A special word of thanks to all of them. Further, I would like to thank my mechanical engineering section of colleagues, Asit and Mahesh, for setting up this event. And last but not least, I would like to show my gratitude to you, the audience of this public lecture. Without your participation, this lecture would not have been a success. Before concluding the event, there is a token of appreciation given to the presenter, Professor Thas Nirmalathas. So I would like to invite Mr. Arjun Manaperi, Chair of the Mechanical Engineering Section, to present the message to the professor. Thank you all once again and have a great weekend. Good night.